The fantasy football edition of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Bet365. Bet365 is offering new users a $1,000 risk-free bet. Sign up today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com. Use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Use promo code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. And, of course, in honor of Veterans Day, everything in the merch store is 10% off with the promo code VETS. All proceeds from this sale will be donated to Mission 22, a nonprofit serving those who have served. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Emerson Beery, tackling the Week 11 waiver wire by myself today. It was a crazy day of football to begin. Baltimore getting upset, Cincinnati getting upset. As a Kansas City Chief fan, it doesn't get much better than that for me. So I was very excited to see that. The waiver wire is interesting this week, though. It's kind of the stages that we're in. If the truly great players, the surprises that were going to be great this season, they've already been picked up. They would have broken out already by now. We are kind of getting into the mix where it is more purely just by injury fill-ins, people getting thrust into larger roles because of that. So we'll be tackling some of the biggest names on the Waiver Wire podcast today. And of course, feel free to send in your waiver wire questions as well. And if you don't check out the live podcast today, you can send those to Dynasty_analyst. That's my Twitter name. So, or X, whatever you want to call it now. So we'll begin. Starting off with today, the first name I had up was Noah Brown. It was hard to see how he was going to top last week's performance, but he did it. Incredible game today with CJ Stroud, who is making an argument to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback. I have him at number 6 right now, but he is certainly making a case for that. With Nico Collins out today, Noah Brown has a huge day. I think my gut feeling on this now is, with Robert Woods was in the first top 3 wide receivers in Houston to start the season. And I think with these last couple of performances, I think you'll see a 3 wide receiver sets of Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Noah Brown. I see Robert Woods now more operating in that wide receiver 4 territory. But Noah Brown, he certainly likely had his 2 best performances of the season. He's moving into flex consideration. CJ Stroud supporting multiple fantasy options. But with Nico Collins and Tank Dell out there, it's going to be tough for him to get home every single week. These kind of wide receivers on the waiver wire, you can kind of, you can find them quite a bit anywhere. So I wouldn't spend my last remaining fab on Noah Brown, but $10, $12, depending on how much you have left, is absolutely within the range of outcomes. Jamie, how you doing, my friend? Welcome in the chat, Jamie, our favorite listener. It was good, my friend. I'm really stacking up the wins now in fantasy. At the beginning of the season was actually a little tough for me, but with bye week, I have fairly deep rosters, talents winning out for me, so I'm really starting to pile up the wins here. I'm in like 40 dynasty leagues, and I think my worst record right now is like 4-6. It's like my worst one, and I have a couple of those out of the 40. But everybody's still in the playoff hunt, so I'm feeling pretty good right now. And what's Mechie going to be a thing is Jamie's question. I don't think it's. I hate to throw some cold water on you, Jamie. I don't know if Mechie's going to happen. I was worried before the season. It just he had second-round draft capital, but it's just so rare when you take those kind of stints off where you're off for a full year. It's a big deal. We see with Calvin Ridley even taking off that amount of time. It's tough on somebody being out of football because, while you were missing time, everybody else was spending 365 days getting better. So it's really tough. John Mechie, I thought he was a little overdrafted coming out of college in the second round. I thought he was more of a third-round prospect as well. So I don't think it's turning into Paris Campbell. Yeah, Mechie, it could be turning out that way, although he has a great story and you hope for more, but it's certainly not going to be in 2023. He's more of an afterthought at this point. Moving on to more waiver wire topics, Keaton Mitchell My goodness, does he look explosive out there, making big play after big play, another touchdown today. Problem, only 3 carries. Keaton Mitchell, he's just not gonna be he's just not a big priority ad for me, even if he's still, there was a good chance he was picked up on your waiver wire last week. If for some reason he wasn't, it's just still he's just not getting enough work to get it done on a week in, week out basis. So Keaton Mitchell, he's another player. Are we going to spend 10, 12 bucks on Keaton Mitchell? Yeah, I would do that, but I'm not spending the remaining amount of my fab on Keaton Mitchell. He is still available in 52% of sleeper leagues I'm seeing. So still a good chance he's available in your league. Throw out a bid on him, but don't expect too much considering the volume. But you just hope that maybe he's worth the ad just simply because you hope Baltimore starts giving him more opportunities. Justice Hill does appear to be fading in the background a little bit. Gus Edwards is going to get his, but Keaton Mitchell, certainly the most explosive player back there. Devin Singletary up next, rostered in 53% of sleeper leagues, had his best career game up to date. Of course, it was a great game for Houston, but I have a feeling this is not going to go back to Dameon Pierce's backfield. Like Dameon Pierce is going to get his opportunity still. I think this, but I think it's going to be a 50-50 split at worst. I don't think with the little success that Dameon Pierce has had this season, I just don't see them after Devin Singletary finally has a big game for this rushing attack that's done nothing the entire season. I just feel like this is going to be Devin Singletary could, have some low inflex. This could be where we just go back to the mean and the rushing just attack goes back to nothing next week. But Devin Singletary is probably my favorite waiver wire ad we've talked about so far, just because I could see him getting the most work. He's a running back, and running backs are just anybody getting touches out there at the running back position late in the season is very valuable because, things could be great right now, but you could be staring at week 16, week 17, money on the line. You lose a great running back, and you're going to need depth pieces before it's all said and done, before you win your fantasy championship this year. You're going to be throwing in some crazy plays still, some bye week fill-ins or some injury replacements. So keep these players in mind. That leads great into Ty Chandler. Alexander Madison left with a concussion today. The track record of players coming back quickly the next week after a concussion has not been happening this year with the new rules regarding concussions. So Alexander Madison probably out next week. Up against the Denver Broncos, Ty Chandler is the next man up. Of course, Cam Akers is done for the season, unfortunately. So Ty Chandler likely going to be getting the most of the work back there. So that's not going to stay. But Alexander Madison has not done a whole lot this season. Ty Chandler, 15 carries, 45 yards, nothing to get home about. But if he has a big week next week, he certainly could carve out a larger role. And he will certainly probably be, I haven't done my projections next week yet, but a low-end RB2, probably sliding somewhere in there for Ty Chandler. So you're probably starting him next week, especially if you have multiple flex positions. So, I would be willing, if I had 30, 40 bucks left, I'd throw $5 or $7 down on Ty Chandler. But keep in mind, probably just a 1-week fill-in. Up next, Joshua Dobbs. Man, what a crazy story that this has been. Coming in, not knowing any plays for this offense, getting Kevin O'Connell calling in, radioing in the play, him telling the team to play, and then they have to tell him what they're going to do. It's kind of like doing backyard football out there, drawing the play on your hand, whatnot. So Joshua Dobbs, another impressive performance, wildly exceeding anybody's expectations in Minnesota. TJ Hawkinson gets 15 targets. That's crazy. TJ Hawkinson must start going. We already knew he was a must start. I was a little bit worried about him, but you're not worrying about starting him. I do worry about like Jordan Addison once Justin Jefferson gets back, and TJ Hawkinson certainly is not going to be getting 15 targets when Justin Jefferson comes back. But I do have hope that Joshua Dobbs can sustain value going forward. I think he's making an argument to be, especially when you consider the soft schedule down the stretch, he's making an argument to be rostered in one quarterback leagues. 4 top 15 fantasy quarterback finishes in a row. There's a chance this could be the best game. I always say that defenses, once they get film on somebody, they are much better. And Joshua Dobbs hasn't played with the Minnesota Vikings yet, so he hasn't got a lot of fresh film on him yet. Once there'll be some defense to start queuing in on his tendencies a little bit more. But I mean, there's a lot of matchups you can probably, especially if you're desperate right now and quarterbacks are thin in your league, pick up Joshua Dobbs. And I think he'll find his way probably into the top half, at least, of the quarterback twos next week. So I don't think the floor is going to drop out for him, especially against the Denver Broncos, who have played better of late, but still not a great defense overall on the year. So Joshua Dobbs, if you're desperate at the quarterback position or one quarterback, you could certainly do a lot worse than him. And there's plenty of people hurting at the quarterback position this season. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence or Joshua Dobbs is a conversation next week, as hard as that seems to believe, it's a conversation. I've been seeing Dobbs traded for late 2024 seconds. I mean, if you're desperate and you're a contender and you're like, nobody's trading you a quarterback, I don't like overpaying for that price. For me, just because I think the wheels could fall out for Dobbs at any moment, kind of like they did in Arizona a little bit. But man, if you're a rebuilder and you had Dobbs on your roster still, that 24 seconds a perfect return. But I don't begrudge anybody if you're desperate. Some people are hoarding quarterbacks, especially in dynasty leagues, especially in super flex. So I understand that. Before we get into more waiver wire talk, I just want to give a couple more shout out to our friends over at the Vets merch. In honor of Veterans Day, everything in the merch store is 10% off with the promo code VETS. All proceeds from this sale will be donated to Mission 22, a nonprofit serving those who have served. So support a great cause and score some sweet gear. Store.sportsgamblingpodcast, promo code VETS. We're also brought to you by Bet365. Bet365 is the world's favorite sportsbook, trusted by over 88 million players worldwide. Props, sides, totals, live betting, everything you can think of. If you like boosts, you're going to love Bet365. Like a 30% profit boost on your NFL same game parlay. Plus, they even have an early payout offer if your team goes up by 17 points. Just head to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bet365. And of course, $1,000 first bet safety net, or bet $5 gets $150 in bonuses. Problem gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And of course, we are also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun I've had winning up to 25 times my money this football season. And now I can play during basketball season too. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and play your entry. With basketball season here too, you can pick a combo projections across football and basketball from the special league, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. Want to play alongside some of the Prize Pick players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promo tab or the app to view entries from the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. This week on Prize Picks, for example, you can bet on Steph Curry, Nicole Jokic, Anthony Davis. NBA is back, so certainly take advantage. Prize Pick even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one or more of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Who else does that for you? Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform doing that. And of course, Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select players' projections to 25% to provide even more value. So, for example, I always talk about each week, I take the below on a lot of these big name players like Patrick Mahomes. If you see that set at 250 yards, I take below that because people love to bet that these players are going to be having a big week. So when I do this, I love to take below these bets. So be taking advantage of these on Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/SGPN and use code SGPN for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/SGPN, code SGPN. And of course, we are also finally, thank you for bearing with me, everybody, by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has a way to play alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long: NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball, and college football. Simply click higher or lower on your favorite players, fantasy stats, and cash in. Of course, I'll say it again. Take below these players on their big passing props. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, all of these names, Justin Herbert. Take below their passing prop every week and you will win money. So watch along, make your picks, and maybe make a little cash too on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with promo code SGPN, Underdog will also double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. Whew. All right. Thanks for dealing with that mouthful, everybody. I do appreciate that. Only a little. We're going to be covering the rest of the waiver wire today, week 11. Up next, I know he's rostered in a lot of leagues, but oh, by the way, Jamie, I know I don't get me started on the fact that I would love to get that recorded so I don't have to keep doing it. But they prefer me doing it live, so I'll give it live to you listeners every single week. We're going to be diving into the rest of the show. While first, Raina, no, I got to yell at my dog. She's licking her ACL surgery wound, and she just had ACL surgery, and she should not be doing that. So she's sitting in here with me. So if I have to yell at her a couple times, thanks for bearing with me. Trey McBride up next. I know he's not available in a lot of leagues, but at this point, every single week starter, fire up Trey McBride. Used to have 12 teams. He's going to be in the top 12 tight ends every single week. We're witnessing a breakout here. Set and forget tight end. We don't have very many of those anymore. So if Trey McBride is somebody still on your waiver wire, I would spend quite a bit of money to get Trey McBride, especially if I still did not be comfortable with one at the position, because, $20-$30, yeah, I'd be willing to do it at this point for Trey McBride, because Kyler Murray's back, and this, I think, we're the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to have some excitement in this passing game now. Hopefully, Kyler Murray, a little bit more rushing than I actually thought. Kyler Murray looked pretty good, especially with the rushing upside that he provided. So, very excited about Trey McBride going forward. Moving on to another. I know he had a rough week. Cade Otton. I know he had a down week. When everybody felt finally comfortable starting him, Cade Otton let you down. That's kind of what tight ends do. That's just what's going to happen. Cade Otton was never going to be never a must-start territory tight end. He's a streamer, and in positive matchups, he's still going to be a borderline top 12 tight end. So, like most players, he's going to be hit and miss. But can you do worse? Should he belong on the waiver wire? I don't think so. In most leagues, I think you're rostering him, and if an injury arises, not happy with who you're playing, great matchup coming up, I think you can fire up Cade Otton, and better days will be ahead for him than today, but it's just going to be a little bit inconsistent. Maybe relying on touchdowns, of course, like most tight ends are. Antonio Gibson. You just look up at the stat sheet every week, and Antonio Gibson has 5 or 6 targets. Seems to be every single week now. I think he's a low-end flex option in PPR leagues. I know Brian Robinson was the talk today, especially considering he had the big day in fantasy. But Antonio Gibson, same house. He's throwing, the ball more than anybody in the entire NFL. The Commanders' offense, they're always kind of playing from behind considering the defense. So Antonio Gibson getting a fair amount of looks. Low-end flex option, like I said, should probably be rostered in all leagues, especially with bye weeks, injuries piling up in the late season. I had I had to start Gibson in 3 or 4 leagues. He says, yeah, and it's a low, not a lot of upside, but high floor. And there's a couple of those left that we're going to talk about too. But low upside, high floor for Antonio Gibson. He's never going to get more than 5 or 6 rush attempts a game, but he's getting 5 or 6 targets, and he's coming down with 3 or 4 of them. That's 4 or 5 points right there. So you're already halfway to the 10 points you need for a low-end flex option. So certainly somebody to throw a couple bucks on potentially. Demario Douglas, still rostered in just under 50% of sleeper leagues. He's the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots. It's not even close. He's getting all the targets out there. He's pretty shifty too. I like Demario Douglas. It's kind of it's very, very reminiscent of the Jacoby Myers. They're totally different players, but just that you see the makings of somebody who could be, a reliable starter down the line here. He is out there because of necessity a little bit. Nobody else is out there for the Patriots, but he's getting this kind of volume. He is another low ceiling, high floor player. I think you can count, for the foreseeable future, as long as this role maintains, 10 PPR points every single week. Fire him up in your lineups. He'll be a low end wide receiver 3 for me. And I'm just waiting for that first touchdown for him to have a big week. So I think that's coming, especially with the targets he's getting. He's getting some manufactured touches back there too. So that's very cool to see, especially maybe near the goal line. Hopefully some of those happen. So very happy to see that from Demario Douglas. I actually dropped him in one league for Quentin Johnston. I was maybe kind of dumb. I was just kind of trying to go for an upside play. I thought maybe he would have more upside with Justin Herbert, but Keenan Allen, I thought for just a second when Keenan Allen had the shoulder injury, I thought, wow, oh my goodness, Quentin Johnston to the moon. But just as a quick note on Quentin Johnston, it's just still 4 targets. I know he scored a touchdown today, but 4 targets, just Jalen Guyton out targeting still Quentin Johnston. It just is never going to seem to happen for this guy, even when he's thrust into an amazing role. So I'm stashing him for hopes that maybe we see a couple big games down here late in the season, but I could absolutely see, if your waiver wire, if your bench is thin, I could see dropping Quentin Johnston too. Rico Dowdle outproduced Tony Pollard today. It was a very weird game. Tony Pollard managers it's getting tough out there. Tony Pollard, not the same player he was last season. Maybe it's the broken leg that he suffered at the end of last season. Maybe it's the increase in volume at the beginning of the season. He was relying on a lot of efficiency last year. Absolutely, Chandler, send in a trade question. Of course, I'll answer it. It's just not going to happen. It's ugly out there for Tony Pollard. With Dak Prescott especially coming on here, Tony Pollard, the rushing game's kind of just falling into the background. It should be noted, if you were looking at the stat sheet and worried that Dowdle is taking over the backfield, it was mostly in garbage time. The touchdown came with 2 minutes left to go in a total blowout. Tony Pollard's job is not in jeopardy, but Tony Pollard is just a flex option, low-end RB2, because you just can't count on him for anything this season. You hope that player returns, but it's too late in the season now just to keep firing up Tony Pollard in your lineup every single week and without thinking about it. Of course, you drafted him pretty highly. You may not have anybody better to start at this point, but it's rough out there for him. I'm pulling up his stats right now. Hasn't finished as a top 12 running back in a month. Finished outside the top 20 running backs in 5 of his last 6 games. So after that strong start to the season where he finishes the top 15 running back 3 times, it's been pretty tough sledding since then. But let's keep in mind here, this is still a player who's received double-digit opportunities in every single game this season. So low-end RB2, mid-tier RB2, I think is certainly still within his range of outcomes. You just hope for some positive touchdown regression because he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. 2 touchdowns in week 1, has not scored a touchdown since then. So I think I saw somebody post the stat today that CeeDee Lamb has as many rushing touchdowns since week 2 as Tony Pollard. So that's where we are right now. Sam in the chat, what is your assessment or take on some of the wild up and down games this week 10 NFL slate? Any dark horse picks as we approach the later part of the season? I don't know if we're talking teams in general, or if we're talking players. I really do like Demario Douglas quite a bit. Before you got here, Sam, I did mention, of course, Trey McBride being a must start now. Noah Brown moving into the top 3 wide receiver rotation for Houston. I did say Devin Singletary. I don't think they're not putting him back in the bottle. I don't think Dameon Pierce has done anything to deserve carries over Devin Singletary at this point. So, those are some sneaky ones. Ty Chandler next week against Denver with Alexander Madison likely out in concussion protocol. So some players to keep an eye on. Teams, I feel like this year I've been so busy and stuck into the fantasy. I've honestly hardly had time to really get into the playoff picture. I'm a Kansas City Chief fan. Of course, I watch all those games, but it's been so about individual players for me. I haven't really gotten to take the full season in. But the Cleveland Browns, if we're talking about teams, I think the Cleveland Browns are interesting. Oh, I see now. You said it'd be player props or anything you weren't discussing. I always say take, the unders on a lot of these props and bets on these websites. I don't know if you caught me during the last ad read that I did, but I always love taking the unders. Patrick Mahomes under, Josh Allen under, Jalen Hurts under. When you're on those betting websites, nobody likes taking those. But yes, Jamie, I will go on for your Browns a moment. Deshaun Watson, everybody hates him. Everybody hates Deshaun Watson, and understandably so. But they're not going to give him any benefit of the doubt. They're not going to talk about how the offensive line injuries that the Browns have gone through. Deshaun Watson, although he's not what he once was, is still, especially relative to expectations. Before this week, he was number 8 in fantasy points per game. If you took out that one game, he barely played it. Nick Chubb has been out for last 2 months. So Deshaun Watson, I think, has, besides some of the just disastrous interceptions that he does seem to throw, he's looking pretty good. So I like Cleveland as a sleeper, just team in general, as we get into the later bit of the season here. Chandler getting in on a trade question. Should I trade away Mike Evans for Josh Allen? I have an offer for Jacobs for Burrow. Thoughts, PPR? I would definitely, man, I would really be nice to get some Justin Fields news super soon, wouldn't it? If I knew Justin Fields was coming back next week, if I knew that for certain, I could see doing it. The Joe Burrow has not just blown the doors. He's finished as a top 7 quarterback the last 3 weeks, top 8 quarterback for the last 5 weeks. That's not production you just want to throw away. I'd be willing to risk it for the biscuit if I had Justin Fields and I thought he was coming back next week. I'd wait a few days on this trade. I wouldn't do it today. I would not do this today. After thinking it out in my head, I would not make this trade today, Burrow for Jacobs. That's really tough. Jacobs just had a huge week last week. Wow, that's a really tough trade. You have ETN, Connor, and Kyron. You know what? All right, I'm flip-flopping again. I would take Jacobs. I'm risking it for Fields. I think you can probably get on the waiver wire and find like a Sam Howell, Deshaun Watson, a Kyler Murray that can get you some low-end quarterback 1 production. So I'm going to take Jacobs there. And Mike Evans for Josh Allen. I would probably do that. I'd like to keep my skill position players if I can, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mike Evans is somebody I'd want to hold on to. He's having a big year. He's definitely the target over Chris Godwin in this offense. If I can make it do with Fields, I want to see what Fields has got next week. Maybe wait a week and maybe make a trade if it's just not happening with Fields. We get what we saw at the beginning of the season. But if we can start getting strung along here, you can go back and make those trades, I think. I think those quarterbacks, if they're shopping the quarterbacks now, they'll be shopping the quarterback next week too. All right. And we're going to shout out our last sponsors on the show, and then we will finish up the waiver wires. Everybody going to be talking about Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theaters near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hype for the fun that you're going to have. Flash deals and last-minute tickets, images of seat views, and then, of course, the lowest prices guaranteed. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. And, of course, the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. And, of course, download the Game Time app to create an account and use code CFBX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CFBX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Hall of Fame Bets is one of our best sponsors as well. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Enter any parlay idea into Hall of Fame Bets revolutionary parlay optimizer tool to get hit rates broken down by leg 2. Sort all the players by hit rate for any bet to learn which players are hot and which picks have value. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with the Hall of Fame bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOPENY.com and use code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning today with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, everybody, we're going to be finishing up this waiver wire podcast. If you wouldn't mind giving a like, subscribe, rating. If you're still listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it really helps me out. Thank you so much. Jamie in the chat, someone offered Hopkins for Marquise Brown in a Dynasty League, declined. Which side declined? Someone offered Hopkins for Marquise Brown. I mean, it's kind of, I could see you holding on to DeAndre Hopkins, but that was kind of prior to today. With Kyler Murray back, Marquise Brown is one of my big kind of sleepers for the remainder of the season. I know he didn't get home today, only 4 targets, but I do think Kyler Murray had a big rapport with Marquise Brown at the end of last season. I do think better days are ahead for him. The Titans offense, though, could end up being just a disaster with Will Levis. It's going to be up and down. The offensive line is absolutely horrible. Will Levis was under fire. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I know what we saw. We were really excited what we saw with Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, I think, you're obviously I had to think it through my head for a minute. But yeah, Marquise Brown's probably the way to go here. His rest of season outlook is probably similar to DeAndre Hopkins, especially if Will Levis if this offensive line is going to give him nothing. I mean, what can you expect from a second-round pick rookie quarterback? So yeah, I've definitely taken Marquise Brown there. Sam wanted some additional context to being on a waiver wire. Doesn't mean a player exclusive rights to be moved. Could you explain the waiver wire? Well, this is a fantasy football show, Sam. So waiver wire is a player who is not not rostered by the 12 in a 12-man league. And, that's what I mean by that. We'd like to talk about waiver wire rankings on this show. So some of the players who in your fantasy football leagues who are available, who you could be picking up. I usually reference FAB, which is free agent auction budget. A lot of leagues run through spending money on players. Now you're allocated a $100 budget. You could spend, $10, $12 on this player. So that's where a lot of that context comes from. And of course, I can, if you hit me up after the show, Dynasty_analyst, I can definitely point you in the direction of some of the articles I've written, intro to waiver wire, beginner's intro to waiver wire. I put out a lot of articles in the past couple of years on those, so I'd be happy to give you a reference toward those as well, my friend. Moving on, we're going to be finishing up here with a few more players. Brandon Cooks. I was shocked to see he was available and still over 50% of sleeper leagues. I think he's a weekly flex play at this point. I mean, it's been a long road to getting here for Brandon Cooks this season. I think the Dallas passing attack was just a mess at the beginning of the season, but we've come full circle. As the Podfather was saying, Jamie, on his podcast, they rebooted Dak Prescott. They rebooted Dak, and this Dallas offense of attack is back. So Brandon Cooks entering flex consideration again. He should not be on any waiver wires at this point. So yeah, I would spend $12 on Brandon Cooks. I think you're firing him up. He's going to have some down weeks, but we've kind of grown accustomed to that with Brandon Cooks in the past. So somebody to certainly just double check, make sure, because, if you're more competitive leagues, he might not be available, but over 50% of leagues, he's available in some leagues. So certainly worth checking out. Quentin Johnson, Jalen Guyton. I mean, at some point, you have to think Justin Herbert gets it going with somebody here. I know that's the Patrick Mahomes argument and it hasn't worked out, but I mean, somebody has to get it going besides Keenan Allen here. If it's not going to be Quentin Johnson, maybe it will be Jalen Guyton. He had 6 targets today. Everybody found the end zone, so everybody made it home. So they all paid off in fantasy, but that won't be sustainable every single week. I'm rostering them. I'm holding out hope that Justin Herbert does get it done with another wide receiver this season. But I'm just throwing a couple bucks on each one if they are there. Quentin Johnson's certainly showing he's not ready for the big leagues yet, but out of necessity when you're playing every snap out there almost now. Good things will happen if you're on the field with Justin Herbert generally. And of course, my last player that I had highlighted was Elijah Moore. If Deshaun Watson and this Cleveland Browns passing attack is going to get it going a little bit, Deshaun Watson getting healthier, Elijah Moore might be that flex play that we thought he might be at the beginning of the season. Had a good week this week, outproduced Amari Cooper. It was a big game for Cleveland, upsetting the Baltimore Ravens. Deshaun Watson, they're going to be firmly in the playoff picture. Deshaun Watson's not going anywhere. Nobody's packing it in for the season. I know everybody's worried if Deshaun Watson's going to play the rest of this year. They're firmly in the playoff picture. So Deshaun Watson's going to be out there. This offense is going to be hopefully getting a little healthier on the offensive line. Hopefully Jerome Ford injuries staying at running back staying healthy. No, Jamie, no longer Elijah List. Yes, we have Elijah Moore. We want more Elijah Moore. So I know it was a long road coming for you, Jamie. So I'm glad your Cleveland Browns are having some success. I think you deserve it still. The Cleveland Browns have gone through a lot these last 20 years. So I'm glad to see you guys getting some wins out there. We'll wrap it up, though, on this waiver wire show. I'm going to be doing these by myself for the foreseeable future. So I was a little off today just because I'm getting back in the groove of doing this full one of these shows by myself a little bit. But I'll start getting that back a little bit. I've had a partner in crime for the last year or so on here. But I'll be bringing in maybe some weekly guests. Jamie, I haven't gotten back to you yet. I was working today, my friend. But Jamie, one of our favorite listeners, is going to get on with me. Maybe not on this show, maybe on my other podcast, but Jamie's going to be getting on with me too. So thank you so much, everybody, for checking out the show today. I really appreciate it. If I didn't get to anybody, if you have any more questions, Sam, for example, if you have any questions about fantasy football in general, just hit me up on my Twitter handle or X, gosh darn it, whatever you want to call it now. I really appreciate it, though, everybody. You can check me out on Face Off Sports Network all week. I'll be out with 2 or 3 podcasts this week for them. Definitely Tuesday with Gary, Friday with Nate covering week 12 or week 11. Yeah, week 11 next week. We're covering week 11, and I'll probably be mixing it up on Wednesday discussing this week too. So thanks a lot, everybody. Take it easy.